Fun Ideas Productions presents the Fun Ideas Podcast. Hi, this is Mark Arnold, and welcome to Fun Ideas Podcast number 8. Last time, if you were listening, I had an interview with Dan Fiorella. We spoke for almost 2 hours, so I've decided to break it up into 2 parts. So this is the second part. So here again is Dan Fiorella.
Another thing that was similar, and I'm sure, this goes back to Chaplin and Fatty again, but, they just borrowed things on silent movie gags. Like, I want to know who was the first one, or what's the first instance of somebody having trouble sitting up a deck chair on a boat?
Yes.
Because that Monty Python did it, Pink Panther did it, everybody has done having trouble setting up a deck chair. Harold Lloyd, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It used to bug me because it's like, I don't want to ever be around a deck chair. They seem highly dangerous.
Those things will kill you back in the day. And that's why we need regulations to cut down on those deck chair deaths.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot less of that now that they've superseded and moved in and taken care of that stuff. Yeah, that's right. A little stick like that.
But yeah, it is kind of funny because the good thing about all this borrowing and stealing, or whatever you want to call it, is at least
it's all an homage.
Yeah, at least it's gotten down on film. I mean, imagine all the stuff that used to be on vaudeville that's probably just lost to time, that nobody ever recorded or anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, film killed vaudeville, but hey, it preserved gags. So
it did. There's some of the earliest talkies where they literally, one of the earliest Burns and Allen movies is just them doing one of their stand-up routines that they did in vaudeville. Smith and Dale. The only record we have of them is that they can hold them into the studio. They say, "All right, do your thing, and we'll just record it with the sound." This is all. Some of the stuff even predates the Jazz Singer because they hadn't quite figured out the technology. And Abbott and Costello themselves, they never owned the material. They did it for the movies, and that's why you look at the show, especially the first season of their show.
Oh yeah,
they would be creating every single one of their signature bits, so they would own it.
Yeah,
that's like the big reason they even did TV was just so they could have it down and they could own the bits and make sure that everybody knew, this is our signature bits, and like it was the best stuff. It was really their best stuff.
Right.
Stuff.
Yeah. Well, I heard it wasn't even just for that. It was just to preserve it, so that they had the definitive version of it, even regardless if they owned it or not. It was just like...
Yeah, but them owning it was part of it, because that was the one thing. They never owned any of the material. Although that's one of the things, too, that they were so lackadaisical about movies, unlike some of the other teams. Mm-hmm. They would just walk in, all right, what bit are we going to do here? And they would just do a bit. They never worried about plot, like they said the Marxwell, Groucho and all. They would really work on the plot and why is this working, and they were worried about movies. That's why they only did one a year, because they didn't want it to. Meanwhile, Abbott and Costello churning out 4 a year at one point.
Yeah.
And so there was no one. The characters never quite gelled the way the other ones did. It was just the aggressive one and the dopey one. They never became. You never saw the connection of them, other than here they are. They've always been together, and they always will. And we're just filming them as they do their shtick.
Yeah. What I found interesting on a lot of old film comedians is that much of the time, except Three Stooges, and maybe a couple others, but much of the time, they didn't use their real names. It's like you have a movie like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and they're named Chick.
Neither one of them are Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, the Chick, and what's the other one called? I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's like, he goes, "Hey, Chick," and it's like, isn't he supposed to be saying, "Hey, Abbott"?
In one spot, he almost does.
Yeah.
When they're up against the wall, Abbott. He does say Abbott real quick.
Yeah, it's like, and and it's like that's their signature catchphrase, and they can't even say it because, in most of their films, they're not playing themselves. It's really weird.
Yeah.
Because they play the same characters each time.
Yes, yeah, essentially. I mean, and the name is in the title. You think, oh, we'll capitalize on that. And then weirdly, because this was just on the other day, too, and Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, there's names in the script. They just, threw it. It was the last movie for Universal. Nobody was watching. Nobody cared. And they refer to each other as Abbott and Costello through that whole movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you look at the credits, he says, oh, he's Benji Benjamin and he's something. No, they're hey, Abbott. They're doing the whole...
And I never understood that. You don't even know why they did that either? Or was that something that they were contractually obligated to not use their real name or something? Because, I mean, like Three Stooges, they said, it was always, hey, Curly, come over here, Or if they didn't call him my name, they call him Knucklehead or whatever. They didn't call him another name, like, hey, Bob, come here, It's like,
They were always, only, in some of the early stuff, they actually do have different names. And like the first one or two films.
That's true. I think Punch Drunks or something, and the Woman Haters, yeah.
The Woman Haters one, that's the first one. They're doing the whole thing in poems, rhyme, which is just a weird one.
Yeah.
But that was the first one. Before Punch Drunks, that one, that was always one of my favorites. That's when, Pop Goes the Weasel and everything.
Right, but I don't think they use their real names in that one either.
Maybe not.
I think it's the third one, which the third one is Men in Black, which that one they definitely use the real names because they're going calling Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I've read Laurel and Hardy kind of did that to protect themselves because there was this thing where if you invented a character, and you didn't own the rights to that character.
Yeah.
Chaplin got away with it because he was Chaplin, but how many rip-offs of Chaplin were there that were making movies at that time?
Yeah.
There were people out there dressing like Chaplin, calling out and misrepresenting it, and they were turning out and pretending they were Charlie Chaplin movies. Mm-hmm. So, and he had a difficult time tracking down because you really can't copyright a look. But Laurel and Hardy, when they finally realized that they were a team, they were going to be working together.
Yeah.
They decided, all right, we're going to use our own names.
Yeah, and they did most of the time. They just had variations sometimes, like Ollie D and Stanny Dumb,
yeah, for certain things. But their earliest movies where they're together, but not quite a team, they are still putting pants on Philip. The name is Philip.
That's right.
So, but it was like, once they realized, hey, I think this is going to work, we should, and then they became Oliver Hardy and Stan Laurel. So that point, and then them, the Stooges, but every other comedian, it was like, even though they're playing the same part, they would always like, oh, well, in a movie, Clark Gable never plays Clark Gable. He plays this name and that name. And they went that route, which was, I guess, the more traditional. The Marx Brothers never played their own names.
Yeah. The closest, Ciccolini or something,
Yeah, I mean, they did some goofy thing, but it was always...
But, yeah, he was like Rufus T. Flyer, whatever the other ones...
Hackenbush.
Hackenbush, Dr. Hackenbush. Anyway.
So it's, I guess it was easy, to each your own, or I don't know if there's anything legal, but they were always, it was never like they were playing parts.
No, I have only seen, you mentioned the Ritz Brothers. I really have only seen their Three Musketeers because not much is on home video. Do they use their own names or they use character names?
I saw two of their movies. One's a horse racing movie, and one was them playing hillbillies, or fake hillbillies. They pretend to be hillbillies against on an entertainment show. And no, I couldn't tell you if they were using their names or not.
Okay, I'll have to do more research. I believe in the Three Musketeers they played the Musketeer named roles, but that was because they're doing an actual book reference, but
But I can't remember now if they were playing names. Not that they ever call each other names so much, but I can't remember now. Again, I only just saw them for the first time a couple of weeks ago. TCM had three of their movies. It was their premiere, so they had never shown the movies before.
Yeah.
And if I were going to guess, I think they played. The characters had names.
Yeah. I think going back to Harold Lloyd, I mentioned him earlier. I think there's only one film where he goes by Harold Lloyd, and I believe it's.
But he always played a Harold.
Yes, he did. But I believe it's Speedy. I could be wrong, but it's one of the ones on Criterion. So it's, I believe it's that one. He signs the check or something, and he signs it Mr. Lloyd or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
So, but yeah, he never tried to use his real name the whole time either. But yeah, whatever. Let's see. Going back to your career again. Well. Well, I told you that it's pretty free form on this stuff. It's okay, So, but there's a couple other things I wanted to ask about. It's like, so I'm a West Coast guy. I'm a Californian, but I know of Joe Franklin, and I've heard his show had been on. It's like a zillion years out there in the East Coast, and was kind of revered. And you wrote for that. What was that show like, and what did you do for it? Because it's.
All right. This is kind of weird. The fact that I had, I'm not going to say run-ins, but my path crossed with Joe Franklin on two different occasions. It's a totally separated occasion. All right. As I mentioned, Joe Franklin show, he's a legend. He's an icon. There was a time when he got people on the way up, and he was like the first talk show that existed. So he could have on his talk show, a Bob Hope, Bing Crosby. He would have these names, and then the next night he would have these total local people and unknowns. It was just remarkable. They just liked him, and if they were in town and they could fit him in, they would do the show in the spotlight. He was a horrible interviewer. He would just do weird things, like suddenly break into a trivia game with these people, like when he had young people on the show, he's still making obscure old-timey references. Anyway, now as I mentioned earlier, I was writing sketch comedy for this group called Style Without Substance. I didn't actually work for Franklin at any point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I was working for them, and I really fit in well with them. They were an amazing group of people, so talented, and as the group kind of found its voice and footing and numbers, and it started out very large, and it came down to a group of core people that I was writing stuff for them specifically. It was a remarkable experience. Didn't pay worth a damn, but it was just a remarkable experience. Again, because Franklin he had time to fill. He had shows to make, and one of the members of the group, I couldn't tell you her real name, but she kind of changed it because it was very similar. She billed herself as Donna Coney Island. And Franklin saw that, and he was in love with it. He just loved the idea of Coney Island, Donna Coney Island. And so the group went, and somehow they booked on the show. I'm trying to think of one time they actually had something to plug. They were doing a fundraiser or something as part of a bigger comedy venue. And they actually had to go and make it sound like Donna was the head of the group, just so Joe Franklin kept saying Donna Coney Island. He just loved saying it. And one of the sketches, circling back again, one of my signature bits for them, for the South That Substance, was a Shakespearean parody called Abbott and Othello. And it's basically taking the Who's Up First thing and putting it in Shakespearean terms. And, the three guys had played it through the course of the thing, but for Joe Franklin's show, the leader of the group ceded the part to Donna Coney Island so she could be on screen longer and kind of justify their existence. It was so fun. The other two guys did the bit as usual. She came out, she introduces lost works of Shakespeare, and then would interrupt them when it was going on to ridiculous lengths. And after that, so they did that on the show. They got invited back another time where they did a sketch that wasn't mine. But it featured Ethel Merman. So again, he was all over that one. And then the third time, they actually came to plug something they were doing, and they didn't get to perform. It was Donna and the guy who ran the group, a guy named Tom Gilpin. And essentially, I wrote them couch patter. and they did a thing about. I actually lifted from something else I had written for me, just trying to. They asked him, ask us about this. What kind of leader Tom is, and then Donna would just like start raving. Oh, you're terrible leader. You're a terrible manager, and cite all the different bad jobs he's gotten him. You got us a job. Now I can't even remember. It's something about playing a college campus. Yeah, but it was a correspondence school, or like I said, to play the Letterman. I told you it could be on the Letterman show. It was postal carriers. That's not the same thing. So a series of jokes, and so we did that a couple of times. Then, totally unrelated, another friend of mine gets the chance to do a pilot for ABC. Where's the party? Premise was, there's a penthouse party, do comedy sketches, all within the confines of this party penthouse. Mm-hmm. And one of the guests that got was Joe Franklin. So they drive him up from New York, and they do an interview with him, and he's like doing his, Joe Franklin dad jokes. It was a cute little interview, and then they have him, they segue out with some guy, human beatbox, who would do a musical rendition of something just by hitting his cheeks and slapping his leg. and that was my intersection with Joe Franklin.
Okay, because my knowledge of him is from Drew Friedman when he used to draw for Weirdo and stuff like that. Occasionally he'd do a page or two and do some weird person like Tor Johnson being interviewed by Joe Franklin, something like that, So I go, oh, there must be a guy named Joe Franklin who's kind of known in the East Coast or New York area or whatever. So that's kind of where my knowledge comes from.
And then even after the TV show kind of went off because the station was on, got taken over, all the little independent stations got taken over by big shots. He still did radio until his dying day.
Because his show never made it out to the West Coast. The one real East Coast one, and you'll probably know this, that made it out briefly to California, and I watched it, and I love the guy now. Uncle Floyd show.
Uncle Floyd! Oh my God!
He was syndicated in the summer of '82 or '83 or something like that, and I fell in love with that show. I said, "This is the greatest show ever," and then it went away because it was such a New York, New Jersey type thing. It's like it never found its audience out here. But I just liked it because I love shows that are just no budget. It's not low budget. There's no budget.
No budget. Zero budget. Actually, I had a friend of mine who actually worked on the show, did the post-famous years, and she would just hang. It was basically hanging out. Okay, let's record a show. We'll do and do shtick and write for him and stuff. And he does radio now. He has a radio show. He plays the old-timey music and does some shtick. It still does appear. In fact, so weird, but Donna Coney Island was doing a show at a place, and he was on the bill. She's singing with the group now, and she's posted a picture on Facebook. So it's Donna Coney Island, Uncle Floyd together. That was so weird because again, I heard about him in college. Yeah. He was doing shows at the local in the village. One of the clubs in the village, the sellout shows with the puppet and the whole playing the old tunes on the slightly out of tune piano.
Right.
College kids loved him. I guess from that, it got some sort of heat where he was syndicated, was suddenly appearing. But even when he was low budget, people loved the show. There's a show out there. I don't know if it's online. Sinatra.
Yeah.
Is on the show.
Yeah.
So it's with the gang. After he became big, they were then taping the show. It was still in production, and because he was now associated, I think it was because he was associated with NBC. They were involved with it.
Yeah.
And they put him in a post-Saturday Night Live slot. And suddenly he's doing a shtick, and who's appearing on it is whoever was in New York being on the talk shows. Mm-hmm. Monty Python would show up.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, what? Monty Python's on Uncle Floyd?
Yeah.
I couldn't wrap my mind around it. And he burns very brightly, and then just it went away.
Yeah.
It was just a weird thing.
The ones I remember at the time, Peter Tork, and of course I think you can see him on YouTube now. He was on there a few times, before the Monkees did the big reunion tour and everything. So, it's kind of like, oh, that's what happened to him. It's like things like that. So, but
well, very much. Yeah, it was friends. I mean, most of the time, we weren't friends on it most of the time. We weren't guests on it most of the time.
Yeah.
But at one point, it was just a weird thing because it was in New Jersey. Then the wrestlers would show up. Like I say, Sinatra, who's a Jersey boy himself,
right,
apparently loved the show.
Yeah. Well, Sinatra even showed up on Soupy Sales way back when. There's black and white footage of him getting with a pie thrown in his face. I think it's on DVD. So Sinatra was a good sport when he wanted to be. So it's like, in fact, he put Soupy. He put Soupy on the Reprise label, so he put out a couple albums for Soupy, so he was good friends with him. So.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's very cool. But that was.
Let's see, and then turning to radio, you did some stuff for Prairie Home Companion. Is that what it says?
Yes, I did.
Oh wow, was that? A lengthy time or a quickie or what?
No, well, I mean, it lasted. I was permitted to submit for a number of years.
Oh, that's good.
Again, this is what overlapped with crack. It was like the end of the 90s. I remember writing because we were submitting material, right after 9/11, and so it was like 98 to say 2004 was like the time of submitting and getting hits on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And again, sometimes the freelance thing when you're far away and you're mailing stuff by then you're able to do stuff by email and all. Sometimes it's good that you're far away.
Yeah. So did you ever meet Garrison Keillor or anything, or you just were doing all through the mails again or whatever?
Yeah, all through the mails, and this is when my opinion of Garrison Keillor is not that good.
Yeah.
Like he would bring the shows to New York on occasion,
mm-hmm.
and you would think, oh, maybe he would invite me to the show. Hang on a second. And no, he never would invite me to the show. He's Garrison Keillor, the self-proclaimed tax and spend liberal, is kind of the reason why something like the Writers Guild had to be invented. You'd send him the stuff, and the producer I dealt with it. And again, this was another ad. Was this a Craigslist thing, or I forget?
No, it has to be Village Voice. Come on, make it consistent here.
All right, the Village Voice again. Radio.
How did the Village Voice go out of business with all these great ads? Anyway, that I never answered. Anyway.
For some, the right comedy for some descendants of Vikings. So I sent in samples, and they were like, "Oh, we love the fact." Again, one of the samples I sent them, which was a version of Abbott and Othello, they loved, and that got put on the air. A much condensed version. That's the other thing I learned about him. Yeah, he wasn't big into writers' rights. He would just rewrite, change, edit, shorten to his content. He kind of paid you on a whim basis, depending on how the audience reacted to the bit. If you got big laughs, you might get a little extra something. If you didn't get big laughs, you got some sort of minimum. So what he came up with.
Had a laugh-o-meter.
And as for on-the-air credits, he barely got mentioned. He would always remember to mention his, our writers for tonight's show are Bob Wire and Sandy Beach.
Right.
But that was it. Meanwhile, I know for a fact I had something on that night, and my name ain't coming up. And it was so bad. But this is how funny it is. People just assumed he wrote everything himself.
Yeah.
To the point when I checked with the Writers Guild because I was in it at the time because of my Hollywood adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm in the writing, and I asked them, well, can I write for radio? Do you cover this? And even the Writers Guild are like, oh, well, doesn't he write it all himself? I'm like, no! So even had turning this stuff out by himself. So it was you never got a heads up when it was going to be on the air. You know, the check to you, once he did, you know, if he used it, you got the check pretty free. He was good at paying stuff. But, you know, on-air credit was minimal. Many times I didn't get. Online was a little better because they would post excerpts and stuff online, and he would sometimes post on the website, you know. But now, because of his dealings, his dating history, that's all gone now. Yeah. So that's why I was lucky. I recorded a lot of stuff offline on a tape recorder. I actually plugged in the thing, learned to record it, then tried to record, you know, and then tried to turn it back into digital. Yeah. Or I uploaded it. I put that stuff on my website, too, just so it exists somewhere.
Yeah. I'll be honest. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it was, and then just, you know, at some point he just stopped. You know, he didn't start using it. You know, once in a while we get something on every couple of weeks, and then just suddenly stopped getting stuff on. And because you write a couple of jokes in the beginning, none of them were getting used. The skits weren't getting used. Now I'm not getting any. Yeah, and he never got feedback. Yeah. And then he fired the one producer I was dealing with. She got left. The other producers were okay, and then they left. Now he was producing himself, and it was just sending stuff into a big black void. And I wouldn't hear. One time, I think we finally realized where nothing was going to happen, and I kind of just like let the whole thing slide. It was never like there was no agreement. I just stopped submitting to him, and no one ever said, "Hey, what happened to Danny?" Yeah, he stopped submitting. No one came after me. I was pitching. I had taken one of my film scripts and kind of converted it into a novel. One of the books is now available on Amazon. This thing called Lost Claus, the Santa Claus Christmas noir mystery.
That's what we're going to talk about next, but go on.
Okay. But there's a segue then. I got involved. I was sending around a book form to agents, and I get a call from an agent. He's interested. I was like, because he saw that I wrote for Garrison, the Prairie Home Companion. They're like, well, you think Garrison Keillor would interview about the book? Yeah. And I stupidly, I'm honest, and say, no. He would.
Yeah, and you're probably right. I mean.
Yeah, and I know I'm right.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'll say this quickly before we go into the book. So, you know, it's like, I was never a huge fan of Garrison Keillor. Sorry for those people out there who are. I just always thought his show was kind of, and maybe I didn't listen to the shows you wrote, but I just always thought it was a show that was almost funny. It was like pretending to be a good show, you know, and I go, maybe that's the joke. It's like it's supposed to be a good show, and, you know, it never warmed me. It was like kind of like, it was produced well, it was performed well. Garrison Keillor had a decent speaking voice.
You could hear everybody.
You know, but...
Well, it approached the edges of humor and then backed away.
Exactly. And I go, okay, maybe that's the shtick. I don't know. I get it. You know.
Humor F.
So, anyway, but that's my 2 cents about Prairie Home Companion. But it's a known quantity, so I brought it up for that reason. So.
Okay. It's fine. Again, I don't mind talking about myself. In any form. But that just drifted away. As I said, I had to contact him once or twice. The Writers Guild wanted to know if he's going to be in New York at a certain time, and maybe we could get him to host. Not host, but be a presenter at the awards, because they do award shows, you know, at that time of year. And he's usually in New York like Christmas time. And I wrote to ask him that. He never responded. I'm like, okay, fine. You know, this is just shouting into the void at this point.
I don't know if they're.
And I just dropped away.
I don't know if they're similar at all, but they kind of remind me he kind of reminds me of Arthur Godfrey or something like that. You know, I haven't.
Well, certainly more so now. Garrison Groper, you know. But Godfrey was the sort of inspiration for a Face in the Crowd.
Yeah.
Fun guy on the air who would inspire Julius LaRosa. Now, why can I remember Julius LaRosa's name, but I couldn't remember Jerry Orbach? I the actual air, he fires him.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, you have some novels, and you mentioned one, The Lost Clause, and then there's Halloweenies, and novel concept. Is that the other one? Yeah. And
novel. That's my epic. That's my epic.
How did those come about? I mean, were those frustration because you couldn't get any more writing gigs on Prairie Home Companion, or they were just written all along and you just eventually got them done, or what's the?
Well, different things. They all came out of different things. I mean, certainly, like when I'd written, it was a script. It was a film script, and I actually optioned it in Hollywood and got flown out there, and it was a whole big deal, and then the whole thing fell apart. So it was my one Hollywood adventure, but it actually got optioned by Warner Brothers. And after years, it just wasn't going anywhere. And I had it in my mind. A friend of mine was a writer. He said, I see you turn it into a novel. So I should turn it. And I did it and would send it around, and it never really got any traction. But I had it. It was done. I'd written it, and I had it. And then Amazon comes out with this, the Kindle.
Oh, yeah.
And then they come out with the e-publishing and e-books and all that stuff. So I was like, well, I have this stuff here, and it's not going anywhere. So I took the thing, and, it's not going anywhere, but all right, Lost Clause was the first one I put out there. As a script, I'd always gotten such nice feedback on it, and so I put it out there and publicized it in my, semi-haphazard, what am I doing way. And I sold a few copies and all. I'm certainly not going to retire off of this nonsense. But I got very nice reviews about it. I mean, I was very happy. The reviews were very nice and positive. So all right, maybe this is something to do. So I revisited a couple of my other scripts. When I wrote Lost Clause, the character, Nick Flubber, is a detective, very bulgy type of detective, and he's in A Christmas Story. That was the whole shtick. Let's take a hard-boiled detective and have him team up with an elf and look for Santa Claus who's gone missing. Comedy gold. So, but the thing was, at one point there was one producer like, well, you know what you should do? We could pitch this as a movie or TV movie, and it's going to be the pilot for episodes, and Nick Flubber could be a character. And because of this, this guy's pushing me, I actually wrote a couple of other Nick Flubber adventures. And then when the one thing says, well, let me go back and pull out, I think I had a radio script, I had a list of different adventures they could go on, and I pulled out another thing. I'd written it was an hour, a parody. I wrote half-hour version of the show where you could pitch and an hour version of the show. This is how insecure I am, and I'm willing to do what anybody tells me to do. He tells me to write 2 episodes, one of each. Okay. So I do one as a parody of the X-Files, missing person, turns out he's abducted, and then I do a parody of Murder, She Wrote, just to kind of mix it up. So I wanted to do one continue in sort of the fantastic vein of Lost Clause, but then do another one who's just kind of goofing on mysteries in general. And so I took those 2 things, I grabbed the scripts and then went back and revisited and rewrote them. So now I have 3 books of Nick Flubber mysteries. I was actually asked, a group of Hollywood writers were putting together something, and I wrote a short story for them. Cupid is as Cupid does, where Nick Flubber, very much like Lost Clause, where he's looking for Santa Claus, he winds up having to look for Cupid. So that was always the premise. This hard-boiled detective keeps winding up in these very weird, supernatural, fantastic mysteries. Halloweenies was a script I wrote, and I just loved it. It was always something, because that was kind of like my childhood. Loved Halloween. I had a story, I had a ton of Halloween sketches I've written over time, between the comedy group, between the Prairie Home Companion, even with a group I'm submitting material I deal with now on the West Coast, the TMI Hollywood. They do they try to turn out a show a week, and they try to do seasonal shows. And so, between Christmas and Halloween, my two favorite things, I would write these comedy sketches. And I had so many, it was like, what am I going to do with this? So I actually wrote a script about childhood and Halloween costumes and just things I remember from my childhood, writ large, wacky things that I would never have. A Home Alone type of plot where he deals, some counterfeit gangsters come to town and hilarity ensues. I novelized that. I novelized that and did the story, and then I took the skits that I did and I stick them between the chapters. And I work it into, it's one of the characters actually has been writing these things, so you get to see it. And so I put that out there. And then my opus, novel concept. There are ideas. Certain times when ideas come to you, you know what they are. This idea, this is a movie idea. This is a TV idea. This is like a half hour. This is a comedy skit. This is a prose piece. This is just like a comedic article I could just write, or a crack thing. And this one idea just presented itself as a book. And I'd never written a book. And this is years ago. I started working on it years and years ago. I wrote it. I completed it. I then lost the bulk of it with a computer issue I had. And it was just, I couldn't bring myself to even go back and visit it. And then the e-publishing thing comes up, and I liked the way Lost Clause did and Space Case. To plug, the only reason I went forward with the idea of doing a self-published book is, have you ever seen some of the covers on these things?
Well, you mean on your books? I've seen the covers on.
No, not on my book.
Oh.
No. I'm about to plug. They put these covers out. It's like clipboard pasted together. They're awful.
Oh.
My daughter grew up to be a graphic designer, and she designs book covers at St. Martin's Press.
Oh. Okay.
And I asked her, would you design a book for this? Oh, sure, Dad, because she has to. I gave her life.
Yeah.
And she's done these wonderful covers for the book, which to me makes, if it didn't look that professional, I don't even know if I could go ahead and do these things.
Yeah.
Because the last thing I need to put is some homemade knucklehead color form style of clipboard cover, which I see out there all the time. So I'd written this, and then because of this e-publishing thing, I said, you know what, I should really complete this. So I went back, I found the old files, pieced together what I had, rewrote half from memory, half new, the sections, the chapters in the middle that got lost, and completed that. And I got one such review. Some guy reviewed me like he was a professional reviewer in person. Mr. Fiorella is the 10th year. He loved the book. I just couldn't believe it. Someone who does Amazon stuff just would write a review that was so nice. And it's just and that again, everything comes from some version of myself. Young writer wants to write, is told, you can't write this. He wants to write some big epic bestseller. Well, you can't write that. You're only good with history. And he goes, I need to go out and see the world so I can write what I know. Stows away on a boat, and then his adventures go from there. It's a very episodic book, but he keeps, each place he winds up doing adventures. Some of it's a parody. I touch on horror. I touch on prison drama, fantasy kingdoms. It was just a blast for me to write. And the fact that I finally assembled it and put it out there, I was very happy with it. Like I say, it got some very nice feedback. So the stuff is out there. I've managed to occupy myself in other ways, so I haven't really. There's another thing I'm supposed to be writing. I haven't. And
that sounds like me.
Right. You get to a point. It's like I've fallen in with this group, and I end up writing for them like a skit a week. And another online site, I've been doing them. They're deal with comedy, so you're dealing with writing one-liners for these people. And it satisfies some of the itch, because it's a very instant gratification. To knock out a 5-page, 6-page skit, it's good. It's done. It's gratification, and you move on. To pull up my bootlaces and to tackle a film script or take one of my old bits and turn it into a new book has become very daunting in my old age. I rarely brag on my feet with this nonsense. But I got stuff I want to do. I know in my brain I have it. I just have find myself in a lull at the moment. So
that's okay. I go through periods like that. I go, I can't work on anything, and then suddenly I just get the creative juices again and start writing again. You know, it's like, but right now I'm kind of like doing the podcast, and I go, I know I'm supposed to be working on this one book, but it's not due till 2020. So I you know, as long as it's 28. What?
I go, you keep churning out things.
Yeah, but I mean, I finished a lot of stuff this year that isn't out yet, so I'm kind of like, I don't want to work on the 2020 project yet. It's like, as long as it still says 2018 on my wall calendar, I'm fine. That's how I figure it. But then I might regret it and go, wow, I didn't work on something for the last 3 months, but oh well.
Oh, the same procrastination.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if I glide through, and normally, I'll glide through it. I can buckle down and do it when I have to do it. And then something goes wrong. It's like, oh darn! If I had given myself the extra time, this hurdle wouldn't be quite so high. And,
right.
You type and your typewriter breaks back in the day.
Yes.
It's like, oh, no ribbon in the store.
Or like what you said,
no.
you lose your hard drive, and then it's like,
Yeah. Boy, that'll take the wind out of your sails real fast. Where's my script? Oh my God!
So, before we go, once you stop procrastinating, do you have any future projects you'd like to plug or anything like that?
Oh, future projects.
Or current projects. Yeah.
Well, as I say, right now, the thing I've been involved with, there's a comedy group on the West Coast in L.A. They call it TMI Hollywood. And they produce a show every week. Brand new show. Frankly, they're insane. But they very much try to mimic that. They have a group of writers. We're all out and wherever. I think they have a few nearby because, L.A. is apparently, lousy with writers. And they get the material Wednesday. They do read-throughs. They start rehearsal Thursday, Friday, and then they do the show Sunday night. I've had some success with them. They doesn't pay squat, but I've used some of my stuff. They started producing a video, sort of a weekend update, weekend review, celebrity minute style of the current events. And writing jokes for them, and I usually get a couple in each video. And some of the things, I've just been so happy with some of the stuff. It took a while. It's not to plug my blog for what's that do? Plugging my blog, but I just got in my head this month. It's Halloween coming up, and like I said, back to the thing. I have a ton of Halloween stuff. Where's it going to go? So I started using it. One, to kind of push Halloweenies the book, but I've been posting some of my Halloween stuff from all the various formats, going back to Prairie Home, or you write a ton of stuff for them, and then realizing the different muscles. The stuff from Prairie Home had to be very short. The Steve Allen stuff, you couldn't do more than a minute. Prairie Home, the stuff that he would let us write couldn't be more than a few minutes. It usually was like a commercial parody. Mm-hmm. So, couldn't be more than 2 minutes. When I wrote something long, he would just cut it down to bare minimum. Now I'm back to this group because they're on stage, and they can't do quick cuts. So they got to do it, and they got a big cast. So you want to write. And now I'm getting back in the rhythm. My first stuff was essentially blackout material. It was barely 2 pages long. And I've rediscovered the ability to write a skit that had a little bit of a plot, had multiple characters. I'm very happy to get those muscles working again.
That's cool.
So that's they're pretty talented, and as I said, they're these young kids today, and they all want to make it. Obviously, they're pushing hard to get somebody to notice them, and I hope they do. They're a very talented group of people, and just the task they take on, to me, that's insane to to do a live show they do about 3 weeks a month.
Mm-hmm.
And they take various breaks then. They do theme shows every so often, like the Comic-Con is out there. They did a Comic-Con show, which was the last time they used one of my bits. I did a parody of the Quick Draw conference they do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, with
Mark Evanier.
Yeah, and Sergio, and I think Scott Shaw does it or something.
Yeah, I've never been, but I read Mark Evanier's blog.
Right.
And okay, he always talked about it, the lead up. He does nothing, technically has nothing to do with the Comic-Con. He's just like owns it. Because he's there, he runs like a billion panels, and he runs this, and he's just, Mr. Writer guy as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
He just does everything. But I've seen tapes of the thing, and I just find, what? There's something that nobody's ever parodied before. So I did that, and the group used it. I was like, oh, that's very happy. I sent it to Mr. Evanier, but I'm waiting for a reaction from him. It hasn't come. And they do the videos every week. I get some jokes in there. So TMI Hollywood Minute. Like I said, long term, I'm supposed to be taking one of my scripts and turning it into another Nick Leber adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a sequel to Halloweenies, the same family, but a Christmas story with the various different things. And again, utilizing some of the myriad of Christmas sketches I've written over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Play around. Let's say, there's a website called The Big Jewel. Again, they play squat, but looks good on the resume, and you'll get exposure. And every so often they do prose pieces. So when I come up with a prose idea that doesn't necessarily work as a skit or dialogue or anything, nothing long, I send it to them. The guy who heads that thing, who's now named Julius Feroza, can come up with. Kurt Luck. I think it's Luch. He runs that. He's an author. He's done a lot of different things. I actually crossed paths with him. One of the radio syndicators I dealt with, they wrote material for them. After Prairie Home Companion, there was these two different companies that syndicated comedy all over the country. And I wrote a lot of, again, that was short writing, 2 minutes.
Was that American Comedy Network? I saw that too. I didn't mention that. So
yeah.
Okay.
American Comedy Network and All Star Radio, and I did very well with them. I was selling stuff with them.
Now, were you? I should have asked about that because I was just curious. Did you work with Bob Rivers at that time, or no?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Well, he does a song parody, so I don't know if you were doing those. So it's like it might be.
I did. I don't know who produced them or anything.
Okay.
It's not like anybody ever told me. Oh, did he produce those things, or?
Well, I thought he wrote them, but maybe he just produced them, and maybe you wrote them and you don't know. No.
Well, I did do a couple of song parodies for them. That was a gift I did not know I could do.
Mm-hmm.
But they like song parodies because they're brief. It's radio. These are usually radio things, so that would work in to their format. So it was usually commercial parodies I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you were going to goof on something, it had to be as a commercial parody.
Yeah.
So if you came up with any kind of skit, turn it into a commercial with the off-screen announcer walking you through it, or a commercial parody. And then that's why going back to this group now was to get back to writing anything longer than 2 pages was. It took a while to get back in that rhythm again.
Right. Do you ever have any plans now? Because I mentioned Mad's now published out of L.A. and Bill Morrison is now the editor. Contributing to Mad again, or has that ship sailed since the crack days?
Well, yeah, I guess I could go back. They won't know me.
They will now. They're listening. No, just kidding.
Oh, God. Oh, darn it. Drat.
Hire this guy. Hire me, too, because I want to... It's the only magazine out there. That's the weird...
I keep considering, but again, it's one of those things like, Oh, yeah, I should do that, and I never quite get around to assembling the material.
Yeah.
And I really need to buy the magazine and see how their rhythm is. It's so much of it is, sometimes it's a matter of you got to get the rhythm of the place.
Yeah, yeah.
Lay of the land.
Well, they've done 4 issues. I will say this: they've done 4 issues, and I think it's like a breath of fresh air. I still think they're finding their way, but. The last 10 years or so with Ficarra as editor by himself, I thought got really stodgy. And then it just got to the point where, hey, we found some humor in making fun of Trump. And it wasn't a little making fun of Trump. It was a lot to where it's like, okay, I mean, I don't care for the guy either, but you're kind of overkilling it here. And so the new Mad, they'll put a jab at it, but they'll tackle other subjects again. And it's like, it's like, so.
Well, that's it. I think that's the danger of anything. Once you kind of become your own little echo chamber.
Yeah.
And I guess again, because people aren't faced. At least I'm assuming, and maybe it was like cracked, where you're not face to face with people, and it's a very small circle they have. We're making these editorial decisions.
Yeah.
And you can't forget.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they suffer from like like Disney went through a whole phase where after Walt died, it was like, well, what would Walt do? And they became paralyzed.
Right.
Paralysis by analysis, and they couldn't figure out what to do because Walt wanted that way. And at some point, you need that fresh breath. They're like, it doesn't matter what Walt would do because he's kind of gone, and maybe we just need to take it. I mean, it's all corporate. I mean, it wasn't like people sat around, we should move to the West. Corporate. DC is owned by.
Well, it's all Warner Brothers. Yeah, it's it's all Warner Brothers.
One is like, we want everybody under the same roof. They happened with crack.
Yeah.
Florida bought it, and we want everything down in Florida now.
Yeah.
And that's one of the heartbreaks is that because of that anthrax thing, all that work was gone.
Right.
All the cracked archives had to be destroyed because of the exposure to that stuff. So, I have what I have. I've scanned it, tried to preserve it as I can, but it's simply, any cracked retrospective is going to be lacking because the originals are gone.
Yeah.
But I should be looking at the submitting to that magazine. My laziness, I got my own worst enemy.
Well, any last things before we go that you want to say or give his advice or say don't do it, stay out of writing?
Well, we covered writing nasty letters to Mad. Don't do that. I mean, do I have any advice? If I had any advice, I would take it myself. I mean, if it feels like there's all the reasons, I've reached the age now for it's like, for all the reasons, I should just like pack it in. I don't, because there's sometimes even with the laziness and the things, and you have to do. When you're young, you're like, I can do anything, and after a few years, you realize, actually, no, you can't. Mm-hmm. But if you enjoy it, there's something to do it. When you get that idea, that first idea, and it starts to click, oh God, there's no feeling like that whatsoever. And it's just, and it's nice that I know that I can take an idea and turn it into something. And I wish I had more outlets. But, I'm doing what I can. I don't know if I should quit. I mean, if you listen to the podcasts on the creative life, I just get so depressed. It's like all these people made it and I haven't. But on the other hand, every so often, I'm kind of reminded of something.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, a friend of mine, and this is a guy who had some success. He was actually involved with a TV show and all. And then recently, so another friend of mine, he'd been sort of in the creative side of Showtime and all. He recently retired. And he said something to me, which the other guy said, wow, I've always been impressed by you. I'm like, why? But, you did this and this, and you stayed with it. And he was a writer, but he just kind of let things... so he didn't continue with it, and he got involved in other things, and but he didn't keep writing.
Yeah.
And if that's his own reward, I'm glad I didn't keep, because to me, it's happened, so it could happen again. So that's one thing that, if it did happen. And to hear it from somebody outside, because this goes back to like when I'm talking to Crack.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mail the stuff out. I email the stuff out.
Yeah.
You're not in the wacky office and with the crazy neighbor, and you're always sitting alone in front of the screen, typing on the keyboard, and you send it out there, and either it hits or doesn't, and you kind of forget, oh, there is stuff out there. Like, I don't know if this is, but you know, I stop and think, you know, I actually did go out to Hollywood once. There was a movie studio that liked my script enough to option it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, certainly it went south from there, but that's not my fault. Crack Magazine, I was a steady writer with them. I like to think they liked my work. I mean, I was always felt included in there, and towards the end, as it went down, again, nobody's fault. But you know, Culpinol, he tried to keep it as a unit, and I've had stuff produced. It's aired on national airways, whether it's Steve Allen or the syndicated radio thing. One time the syndicated thing, the movie song parody I did was on CBS FM radio here in New York. They never do parody things. Like, oh my God, how did that happen? and you forget.
Yeah.
But it's a nice feeling. If you have the people, if you work gets to like competent people who can do a nice job with it, you sit in a little bit of awe, not just of yourself, but just the whole process. Like, you wrote something on paper, you sent it to them, and they bring it to life in some manner, and it's just an amazing feeling. I mean, and if you can get that feeling, you know, it's like, I guess you don't want to be addiction where you chase it at all odds. And fortunately, I've always had one foot in reality. You know, husband, wife, family. It couldn't go too far afield. Go chasing that dream wherever it takes me. You know, there's still the day-to-day reality to keep you grounded. But it was always weird. I always felt like I had one foot in each world.
Yeah.
And one kind of helped balance the other, where I wouldn't go. You know, we're not going to jump in a car and drive to L.A. and serve wait tables or something. And this isn't. I'm rambling at this point. That's not even advice. What the heck? Where was I going with this now?
Oh, you were still talking? I'm sorry, I fell asleep. Oh. I may have to break this one up into 2 episodes. I probably will, because it's, you know, we're talking about 2 hours here, which is fine.
Oh my God, that's all right. You get me started, man.
Yeah.
Anyone gets me started. I sit in an office all day, and I can't say boo, and now I wants to hear my story? Shut me up.
See, I work in an office where I'm on the phone all day, so it's like, I'm like, really like, do I really want to do this? But at the same time, you're doing most of the talking. I ask the question, then I can just sit back and go, he's talking.
Very, very clever.
But this has been very entertaining and very good. Any last things to say, plugs or websites or anything else? Shoe size? I don't know.
Yeah, the usual thing. Social media. Buy my book. I'm DanFiorella.com. I'm on Twitter. I use my Twitter feed to put out. Actually, that's a weird thing. That takes a lot of it. You scratch a lot of itches when you get a one-liner or something, and you post it on Twitter. That's like scary how much of it and then it distracts you from doing something real. But I tweet probably too much. But I throw out, that's the jokes and stuff.
Yeah, my vice is Facebook.
Galaxy Rangers still exists out there, and there are fans, and they're on the web, and it's a bit of an ego stroke having them pop up on my web. They ask me questions. It's just all this stuff. It exists. It's out there. People do watch it. They like it, and you kind of forget it. It's like my friend used to say, because he didn't go around, you work in an office, you don't tell everybody you're a writer. He always said, I said, you don't? And he goes, yeah, it's like my superpower. It's my secret identity.
Yeah.
I'm Clark Kent here, but out there I'm Superman, and I really don't want people to know. And it's kind of nice once in a while.
Well, for me, I don't like to explain myself. It's like, they go, you're a writer? What are you working here for?
Oh, the other thing, you should write about this place. It's so funny. And no, I write forget about this place. That when it finally came out of work and they found out, that's constantly, wow, you should write this. This is funny. Are you paying attention? Why don't you write about it? No, that's okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, it has been a pleasure, and
well, thank you. Thank you, Sinatra. It really was a pleasure. It's just like something cool and neat for me. So.
All right. And
cool and neat. Cool.
Once I get it set up, I'll send you a copy and post it all over the place, and you'll know about it soon.
Oh, yes. Please do. Please do. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time out and the invitation. This is something new for me. It's like have a career retrospective.
Yay.
I realized, I had a career of sorts.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
right.
Dan, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. You do it.
Have a good day.
You too now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening, and thank you again, Dan Fiorella, for being my special guest. Episode number 9 will be coming soon. If you'd like to comment and or be a guest on this podcast, please drop me a line at funideas.mark@gmail.com. Become a Patreon of Fun Ideas Productions. If everyone listening just contributed $1 a month, that would be a tremendous help. This has been the Fun Ideas Podcast. This is Mark Arnold speaking. This episode is copyright 2018 Fun Ideas Productions. Thank you very much, and have a good night.